I don't believe in Ghana. You see, I participated in the first march for independence, and I was just about 3-4 years old in Bechem when I witnessed the conflict between the CPP and the UP constantly fighting. That wretched beginning of our nation is what has eaten into this country up to today.
If his systems, and I'm talking about Nkrumah, had continued to today in terms of development, do you think Ghana would be stronger now?
That's a very interesting question. The last 3 years of Nkrumah's rule, life was beginning to be very tough for Ghanaians. This is the truth. And some people don't want to get the truth.
What was truly freedom?
So if you say you are free and somebody is still feeding you, then what is freedom?
Do you think there can be a democracy for long if this economy keeps failing the youth?
People can get angry. And when people get angry, social revolution emerges. It's as simple as that. Can a president come in and waste public funds and just get away because he was president? They should be arrested, tried for wasting public resources, and imprisoned, if that is what we have to do. Late 50s, when we were independent, afresh, there were certain countries that, statistically speaking, were about the same level or we were even better than them, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, South Korea. Statistically, why is it that these countries have done well? Then you begin to wonder, what's the problem? When the world out there applauds Ghana for being a stable democracy, some of us just laugh it off. Because good governance, democratic governance, extends beyond elections. It should include
Hello, Prof.
Hello.
You're welcome.
It's my pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so excited. I know the notice was short, but I sent you your first message. I was like, let's do this. And I don't know if you remember your message was like, I'm happy to talk about Ghana's independence 7 decades ago. And I'm like, wow.
Yes.
That was actually 7 decades ago.
Yes, because, those of us who were born before independence, we have a lot of memories and reflections. And therefore, when you invited me, I thought it was a wonderful opportunity.
Prof, can you please tell me about yourself? Who is Prof Baffour? What did growing up look like? When did you even get to governance and all that? Yeah. You worked at the UN.
Yes.
I think you said you retired in 2013.
Yes, correct.
2013, I was like 14.
Oh, my goodness. I'm here talking with my own grandchild.
Yes. So, Prof, please tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born, my hometown was Jeso Bisiansi. That's the home of the famous, iconic woman, Agyeman-Duah. Mm-hmm. I traced my ancestry somehow to her, but that's not relevant here. I was born there and I grew up in Bechem, which is a town in the Ahafo region now. I went to school there, finished elementary school. And I did some odd jobs here and there. Finally, I found myself in the institution at the higher level, sixth form. I did that time you call it O level, what today you call WASE or something. Yeah. I did it privately and then entered the seminary to do 6 years of sixth form. And after that, I decided to go to the University of Cape Coast. I did that and on till I ended up with a PhD from the United States. I taught for about a decade plus in the US. Came back to Ghana as a Fulbright professor at the University of Ghana in the mid-90s. I did 2 years, because that program was limited to 1 year, but I got an extension for an extra year. And I finished that, and instead of going back to my tenured professorship in the US, I decided to stay. So since then, I've been in Ghana.
Oh, okay.
And the rest, as you know, is a long history.
Prof, I read somewhere that you did music or you tried music.
Oh, I think at the time I could have called myself a Gen Z. I was a young man. I didn't have much to think about to do, so I joined a band. Oh. I was only 14, 15 years. I just finished elementary school and I followed the band, but it didn't last because I discovered quickly that I wasn't born for that. I was asked to be on the floor to sing James Brown's Papa Got a Brand New Bag, and at that time, that was one of the hit songs. You might not know it. Head of James Brown.
Yes, please.
Yeah, very popular guy in the 60s in this country. I attempted to sing and it was just a disaster. So after that, I quit. So I did attempt to become a musician or bands, but it didn't work for me.
One of the things I saw online was governance expert. And I think I saw something about policies and all that. Like, when did you get into that?
Actually, when they call me governance expert, I correct them. I'm not an expert as such. I'm a student of governance because I take keen interest in it. After leaving the University of Ghana, I joined the economic IE, Institute of Economic Affairs, briefly as a director for 2 years. Then I teamed up with my good friend, Professor Agyeman-Duah, and we co-founded the CDD, Ghana Center for Democratic Development. It's simple. In the mid-60s, Jerry Rawlings was the president, elected president. He's a guy who transformed himself from a military person to become a civilian leader. His rule as an elected president was better than when he was a military person. But all the same, I think he carried over some of the tendencies of military leadership. So some of us were not too confident that the newfound republic, the Fourth Republic, which started in 1992, will really survive. It could be undermined by the same military people. So that created the interest to ensure that our new democracy, our new republic survives. And that is what really led me and my friends to work in the area of democracy, good governance, and eventually the other things that followed.
There's something you call the painful birth of Ghana. When I read it, I was like, this was just like childbirth when others are going through. And you were talking about how growing up in Bechem, you were witnessing the CPP and the UP.
Correct.
And all those things. Can you tell me about that story?
You know, that's a real story.
Okay.
If you've read your history, you will discover things like action troopers and group troopers, wherever. These emerged out of the conflict between the CPP, Convention People's Party of the Kwame Nkrumah, and the UP, United Party, when the other opposition splinter groups came together to form one big opposition party against Nkrumah. So towards independence, there was a serious ideological conflict between these two sides as to how the independence should be managed and who should become the leader and all. And unfortunately, it ended in real violent conflict between the two sides. And I was just about 3 or 4 years old in Bechem when I witnessed the two sides constantly fighting. Occasionally, people coming from the outside to support the sides.
We're not talking about fights with the amount, like.
No. I'm talking about real. It wasn't what I saw wasn't fist fights. Occasionally, people when they come into close contact will fight, but it was more like the CPP, the action troopers and the action groupers on both sides of the road and throwing missiles. These missiles were simply bottles, like beer bottles filled with water. So when you throw it, it hits, it explodes. I don't know how they devised that kind of weapon, but this I saw on a few times with my own eyes, and people were getting hurt. I tell of a story of 3 gentlemen who came to our house, badly wounded, still talking about going back to the war front to fight. What was intriguing for me then, as a little boy, and as I grew up to understand why they were fighting, was precisely why a country seeking independence will not be united to fight the colonists, the colonialists, but rather
fight among themselves.
Exactly. That for me was my curiosity when I grew up to rethink that whole incident. And I think that wretched beginning of our nation, which in my book I refer to as a painful birth of a country, is what has eaten into this country up to today in some ways. Today we don't do physical fight, even though Even today at elections, people shoot, people fight, So it seems to me that's the origin. And this vigilantism that emerged later in our politics, I think, originated from that incident in the mid-1950s, as the two parties were fighting each other over who became or who took the leadership of the country after independence.
You were talking about how instead of coming together to fight against the others, they were fighting among themselves. Why was it so? Was it just because one person wanted the power?
Yeah, I said that it was ideological fight.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to the history, you realize that between Kwame Nkrumah, who wanted a unified country and ideologically to the left, versus the UP, that was ideologically to the right, and also there was some point where there was a movement called the NLM, National Liberation Movement, started in the Asante area, where they were even talking about not secession, but a federal form of government. In other words, all the various components in the country should have their semi-autonomy, just like Nigeria, federal form of government, or like the United States, where the 50 states are all independent in a way, but under one federal government. So that was the idea. But of course, Nkrumah opposed that because he didn't believe that that structure of governance will help the country. So that was one of the main reasons the fight occurred. But it was a useless fight, I should say. Completely useless fight.
Yeah, very useless.
Yes.
As a young boy, 4 years old, growing up maybe like to 10, 15, did that affect you in any way? Like witnessing those fights?
Lately, when I think about it, maybe yes, because my orientation and how I look at governance in Ghana tend to reflect that. In other words, there's no need for this extremism in the differences of ideas on how to run a country. This extreme partisanship that prevents the country from taking unified positions, especially in our development. And I think all this could have developed from those early experiences that I have. I hate partisanship in politics. That's why perhaps I couldn't join political parties. So that's that's why I cannot be a politician, because I don't believe that extreme partisanship. I mean, there will be differences. Don't get me wrong. Two of us cannot think alike. It's impossible. But once we recognize our differences, I would love to see people coming together to build a country. We see, and that, I think, is something I may have gotten from those early years.
Wow. Prof, let's talk about 1957, Sit March.
Yes.
Like you said, your best is 7 decades ago, right?
Yes.
Now, when Sit March is coming, young kids are thinking about marching and are thinking about the Independence Square. It has become ceremonial, sort of. Right? What did it truly mean back then? I mean, we were not there. Most of the people watching this video were not there. But what did it feel like? Freedom? Like, what was truly freedom? That's my question. Like, what did it mean then?
I participated in the first march for independence in 1957. I was just about 5-6 years old, And of course, I was barefooted then. But I remember what our teachers told us, that Ghana was going to be free from British rule, and that would be free to determine our destiny as a people. These are my own words, but that was the message that we were getting. Of course, the Union Jack, which is the flag of Great Britain, was lowered, and the Ghana flag of red, yellow, with a black star and green were hoisted. So I saw all that as a kid. And what it meant, again, at this age, when I reflect, I feel strongly that our early leaders did not explain exactly what freedom meant, whether by design or by default. They simply did not explain. All we knew was that the white man is going to go away and we are taking over. But I think freedom should have meant more than that. It's not a matter of changing the players. or who lead the country. It was more a matter of let people understand that freedom has some responsibilities. Because if you are free, it means that you have to explore your own means of feeding yourself. As an example, so if you say you are free and somebody is still feeding you, then what is freedom? You understand? So the responsibility that comes along, or rather actually the responsibilities that come along with freedom, were not fully explained. So we started our independence as if the government was going to feed us. And that mentality seems to persist till today because of the structure of governance that we created at the time, where everything was centralized at the central government, to say in Accra, and everybody else dependent on Accra for their livelihood. That, I think, is the fundamental, in retrospect, the fundamental problem that we created for ourselves. We did not make people feel that the freedom should mean you build yourself in the context of the nation's own development plans and strategies and aspirations, but basically you take care of yourself before the government will come in if there's a need, you know. So I think we started on a wrong footing in that respect. And especially once Nkrumah introduced, after the multi-party thing by 1960, we became a one-party thing, and then Nkrumah, for all the good things he did, also turned himself into a dictator. People reject that word to be described about, to use to describe Nkrumah. But the fact is, once there's no opposition and that once you control the parliament and you control the judiciary, you become almost a dictator. So his last few years, I think, turned things, unfortunately, backwards. And freedom really lost its essence. We could no longer participate in the election of our leaders after 1964 or so. In fact, the last national parliament, the assembly, was a one-party election. Nkrumah appointed people to certain constituencies to represent the people. And so that is I guess, the downside. But there were so many things I can say to glorify Nkrumah and his leadership and all. But talking about freedom, I'm trying to say that we did not get the full import of freedom as people. We rather thought with the British white folks gone, our own people in power, that was the freedom. But freedom entails more than that.
You mentioned Nkrumah instated the one-party policy and
towards the end of his rule.
Towards the end of his rule.
Yeah.
So you don't think that is a thing that should be done? Looking now, do you think there was a reason why he did that?
There was a reason because he felt strongly. But by the way, it was within the context of Africa's politics at the time. In the 60s, most African countries were one-party states.
Right.
And most African countries look for inspiration to the then Soviet Union. And therefore, it wasn't a surprise that Nkrumah would be one of them, okay? But in retrospect, I don't think anybody wants a one-party state. That's why in our current constitution, there's a clause against the formation of a one-party state. Simple as that. So in that respect, I don't think he did the right thing. But maybe circumstances may have forced him to do that.
Yeah. If his systems, and I'm talking about Nkrumah, had continued to today, in terms of not necessarily the party, but in terms of development and all that, do you think Ghana would be stronger now? Or would a lot change?
That's a very interesting question. But you see, again, if you do your history of Ghana, and I lived through it, the last 2-3 years of Nkrumah did not signify that we're going to continue to do well. Yes. And I do indicate this in my book, my autobiography. You see, this is the truth. And some people don't want to get the truth. And I'm not that type. I'm not an ideologue. Look, the last 3 years of Nkrumah's rule, life was beginning to be very tough for Ghanaians. Shortages of goods started. And I remember when my mother used to send me to be in the queue at the GNTC, Ghana National Trading Corporation. It was a state-owned trading corporation. That's where you could get most of the essential items to buy, controlled by the state. And when goods came, I was then in Bechem. My mother would send me with money to go and be in the line for I don't know how many minutes or hours. Because, for instance, when the goods arrived and the district commissioner, people today we call DCEs, and I remember very well the one for Bechem called Kwabena Kunto, Mr. Kwabena Kunto was the DC. Everybody has to wait for him to come first to the GNTC, take whatever he wants before the public will be served. This is my own testimony.
Wow.
I don't know what others in Accra or elsewhere saw, but this is what I saw and participated. Things were in short supply. Also, all studies indicate that the last 2 years or 3 years of Nkrumah, most of the factories he had set up, which are good. We had the corn beef factory in Bolgatanga, jute factory and shoe factory in Kumasi, a Bosso glass factory, so many things that he did. But unfortunately, towards the last 2 years, all these factories have started collapsing. Poor management, lack of investment, further investment, bad work attitudes of Ghanaians, because if something is for a ban, it's a ban there, nobody cares, like we still continue to practice today. So all the great factories that he set up, most of them were declining. So therefore, how can I sit here and say, oh, if the system had not changed, we have had a better country today? I don't know. I throw it to those who also follow trends and analyze our history, you see. So if you ask me, if Nkrumah's ideas and policies are continued today, will Ghana be better off? That's for your question. And I'm saying that first, let us recognize that societies are dynamic. Therefore, countries are dynamic. Things of the old could not apply today, just as some things of today could not have existed yesterday. So it's a question that I think would be needless to answer, because I don't think Ghana, or for that matter, a country will be so static in its ways that one man's idea could just prevail. Even the Americans, the ideas of Abraham Lincoln and Washington and all that, that's not what we see in America today. America is not the same as during the slave era in the country. So things change. So for me, Nkrumah's era was a necessary era for our country, did what he could, but there was a time to end it, and it ended.
Right. He lived through the military era. We spoke about Rawlings. What did that do to Ghana?
See, let's look at the first military era. That was 1966 to 69, the National Liberation Council. And just yesterday also, I read that the government has changed the name of the international airport back to Accra International Airport. It used to be Kotoka International Airport. Kotoka is the military leader who led the overthrow of Nkrumah with others, Afrifa and others. But you see, they had a different agenda. They came and said, look, we are not politicians. So we are going to be here for only 3 years, prepare the grounds for civilians to take over. And that's exactly what they did. So they did not have any real agenda to build the economy per se, to any agenda to redesign the political system. Nothing. Just be leaders and allow politicians to do things. So in that respect, there's nothing much one can say about the NLC and Ghana's progress. The second military era was led by General Ike Achampong. He was overthrown or displaced by his own deputy, Akufo, General Akufo. And Akufo, after some months, was also overthrown by young radicals in the military who formed the AFRC, led by Rawlings. And they ended up rounding up all these leaders and executing them for corruption, so-called, and mismanaging the affairs of the country and bringing the armed forces into disrepute. These were the three key allegations against them. So they were executed publicly. And following that, the era of Champon, 1972 to 78, was like a wasted era. Nothing good was ever said about them. Nothing.
Not even one.
It appeared even like a taboo to mention a Champon during Rawlings' era, especially when he was still the PNDC chair, not when he became an elected president under the Fourth Republic. You see, and that has been the story of them. And until I wrote the book on a Champon, 2021, which today has opened people's eyes to see that, yes, he was bad in many ways, but a Champon was more progressive even than some of our civilian governments, recounting the many, many, many things that he initiated, you see. So in a way, I've revived the image of a Champonist government. Some people may disagree with me, but that's fine. If you disagree with me, write one to disprove what I've written. But most people, in fact, a few weeks ago, I was in a function with some retired senior officers, and at least 3 of them came, generals who came and said, look, we read the book, I read the book, I'm happy you did it because it has really told the truth. But that is not to praise myself. All I'm saying is that people have all of a sudden, after that book, realized that that era wasn't as wasted as those who overthrew him told us. Okay. The next military era was the PNDC, 1981. I'm jumping over AFRC because it was a short period. 1981 till our Fourth Republic in 1992. 11 years or so. That was under Rawlings. He was a revolutionary. That's what we are told. And I think in his own way, he did very well in trying to straighten up a country that was messed up economically and other things. Initially, we saw how he literally took charge, going to the farms and carrying cocoa bags and other things. Very, very impressive kind of leadership. But I think after 11 years, I cannot sit here and point to anything. I don't know. But if you ask me, what did we achieve in the 11 years under Rawlings? I think most of his admirers will say he brought accountability, transparency, and what? Accountability and transparency and what? There are 3 catchwords here, you see. Yes, these were his mantra. And I think he did very well in propagating that. And I believe strongly that he could have shaped the thinking of many Ghanaians, if not most Ghanaians. So he did make some impact. But what is a bit strange is that after all that, including killing people, shipping market women, on and on and on, what he tried to accomplish in those 11 years today, it seems like we are back to square one.
Yeah.
People still cheat. Politicians still steal state funds. They are corrupt. At least, I don't say that the politicians themselves point fingers at themselves. If you are in opposition, the one in power is corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in power, we are not corrupt, but the previous one was corrupt. That's what we have today. So it seems to me, therefore, that the efforts of Rawlings really didn't make any much dent on our national conscience in terms of ethics in public life, you know. So I don't know what else I can say about that. But he, as a person, was very charismatic, very persuasive, and did what he could. But the best he did wasn't good enough to change the circumstance of the country.
I like how you mentioned earlier on that you are not a politician, and that is why you're not a politician. You say things as they are, right? I've even changed for that before, saying things, because like I mentioned, I watched some of your videos and all that. You are putting it out there. Do they come after you?
Fortunately not.
Oh.
Because you see, when Rawlings was in power, towards the last, I came into the public domain 1996 without elections. I monitored that elections, and we formed the biggest civil society election observer group back in 1996, and we did that. And thereafter, I've been in the public domain. And 98, when we formed the CDD, we've continued with advocacy. When we, under his rule before 2001, when Kufuor came in, I encountered him a few times. But frankly, nobody ever touched me or threatened me. If they did, I wouldn't know. But I never felt like something was after me. But there's one incident I can say. For what I did, I had friends in the security sector, military and all. And there was one thing I did. Towards the end of Rawlings, this is, by the way, documented, so it's not a secret. We took senior officers for a workshop, seminar in Akosombo. And that was the first time all commanders of the armed forces came together under the supervision of civilians, because the CDD is a civilian organization. But I personally approached the then Minister for Defense, retired Colonel Donko. I discussed the program that we wanted to do because we've done a research on civil-military relations and have discovered so many things that civilians are not happy about. So the perception of civilians, of soldiers, was very, very dirty. So we approached the defense minister to share the findings of this research. We were with him. I was with him. I went with my assistant. So we were with him for about an hour, 30 minutes. And he was convinced that there's a need for quote-unquote education of the soldiers. So I said, well, the best way to start is with the commanders. And he agreed and summoned all commanding officers around the country to meet in a 3-day workshop in Akosombo. All right? Rawlings was the president. And we did that. In fact, General Kafia was a CDS, right? Chief of Defense Staff. Yeah. And I know so many other names I don't have to mention. So we did that, and after the event, a senior officer called me to tell me what is going on, that Rawlings have been very unhappy about what we did, that they should allow these, he used a word I can't use publicly, allow these people, young people, civilians, to indoctrinate my officers with whatever that they think, all kinds of issues, and give a veiled warning that if this thing happens again, blah, 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 blah. But I think the encounter between President Rawlings then and Akafia with certain officers was such that they were scared that perhaps something might happen. So that was the first time somebody called me from within the sector to caution me that this has happened. But then he added, but don't be afraid. We'll be protecting you. But besides that, I have not personally felt any under all the governments.
That's good.
Yeah.
Ghana has achieved something rare in Africa, over 30 years of democracy, right?
Yes.
We've done power transfers between two parties.
That's right.
Very peacefully. There's fight and all that, but very peacefully.
Very peaceful.
But the economy seems to be in a cycle. The government will come. I was talking about it with one team before you came in. The government will come, they will borrow money. It will look like, oh, things are okay. Then inflation will rise, things will start going bad, prices will rise and all that. What is the problem?
That is a curiosity most people have. So that when the world out there applauds Ghana for being a stable democracy, some of us just laugh it off, you see. Because good governance, democratic governance, extends beyond elections. It should include improving the welfare of the people. And the welfare of the people gets improved through a resilient and productive economy that ensures that the basic needs of people are met, that infrastructure for progress continues to be built, on and on and on. So what we have, I normally will call it, we have succeeded with what we call electoral democracy. That's where our success is. Electoral democracy, meaning we have developed the capacity to conduct elections and change governments. In between elections, nothing much happens. Not that governments do not attempt to do something. All of them attempt to do something. But whatever that they attempt to do not yield any lasting, sustainable impact. You see, and I think the problem is more to do with what I remarked earlier about this excessive centralization of power in Accra. To the extent that when you go to rural areas, and I hope you do visit, I don't know where you come from. Even if you come from Accra, there are some rural communities in Accra that will shock you when you visit those places. After elections, you don't see any civic activity anywhere in the country. We're all waiting for, there's a play when I was young, we read a book called Waiting for Godot.
What was that?
Written by a French playwright, Waiting for Godot. Like we are waiting for God, and we wait and wait and wait and wait, nothing happens. That's what it is. So after elections, our communities go back to their normal routine. If government is not coming to improve the road, we are waiting. If the government is not going to build a school, we are waiting. If the government is not providing water, we are waiting. All because the system we have created has not empowered people to be to take responsibility for their well-being. And government alone is not capable of doing that, you see. So if you say our democracy has been reduced to electoral democracy, it is true. You see, it is true. And even though we have systems of accountability and probity, that was the third mantra of Rawlings I was trying to recall, probity, we have not succeeded in demanding accountability and probity from our public officials. And we have a situation where governments come, like you said, and government go for loans. I remember a time when one party in opposition was telling a party in government, oh, if it's a matter of getting loans to rule a country, then even a primary school kid can go get a loan and build roads. And the same party in opposition that made that accusation came into government and borrowed and borrowed. You see, the game they play with us. You know, so our development, you see, and what is galling for people like me, when we have seen so much, you know, and we all know that in the 1950s, late 50s, when we were independent, afresh, there were certain countries that, statistically speaking, were about the same level, or we were even better than them economically, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, South Korea. Statistically,
Singapore.
I'm telling you, and I've been to Singapore twice. Statistically, we were better off.
But today we can't compare.
Lee Kuan Yew started his whole thing in the early 60s, 59, 60s. And Singapore, small island, was nothing more than farmers and rearing pigs and blah, 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 blah. Singapore. And Malaysia, a former British colony, who are about the same level. In fact, I'm told that Malaysians even came to Ghana to get the palm tree to go there. Today, they are among the best producers of palm oil for industry. You can go on and on and on. So when you think of that, why is it that these countries have done well? Countries that we started with, but we are not. Then you begin to wonder what was the problem, you know? But I can give you a quick answer that was given by Lee Kuan Yew himself, because he was in school with Nkrumah and Jomo Kenyatta in London at the time. He was also a student, so he knew these new African elite that was emerging. So he went home and started his transformation of his country. Nkrumah here, Jomo Kenyatta there, Nyerere there, and all that. And I read one of his many writings, and he said that the difference has been that Singapore decided that their development will not be through a shortcut.
Okay.
And that private participation was essential, coming along with certain discipline, dedication, and a vision that everybody buys into. I've just simply paraphrased Lee Kuan Yew's statement. Whereas, according to him, most African countries, the friends that he knew, wanted a shortcut to progress. For him, the shortcut was what? State control of the economy. And this comes back to our earlier conversation on Nkrumah, deciding that the state should control the economy, not the people. See, Lee Kuan Yew said, no, that was a bad strategy. It should be the people who should control. So private sector was boosted, but with strict discipline. Today, if you are found corrupt in the government, you go to jail. You see, that's the discipline they have developed alongside the economic progress. But here, it was different. So we will have to own up to the mistakes so that we do not repeat them.
Yeah.
But we continue repeating the mistakes because nobody admits. I don't know of any president in our country who ever apologized to the people. Kufuor's apology was over. I remember Kufuor when he was talking about appointments early in his presidency. He said, before he came into government, he didn't know that it would require blah, blah, blah. So he apologized. But that's nothing much. But in terms of serious omissions and commissions and that our leaders have done, nobody apologizes. In fact, the whole of Africa, the only leader who straightforwardly apologized to his people was Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. He was Nkrumah's contemporary. He ruled for, I think, 26 or so years and retired. Then he turned around and apologized to his people that he pursued wrong policies. He was also pursuing socialism.
Right.
You see, nobody else has apologized.
Is there a clause in the Constitution that does not allow presidents to be arrested? I've been thinking about this.
Oh, you asked me a very interesting question because just yesterday, last night actually, Top Radio or something, they called me and we were talking. And we were talking about the waste in government in terms of how one government comes in, initiates certain developmental projects, he leaves, and the next one
starts a new one.
Not only starts a new one, he allows the previous one to rot away. So, interestingly, I said, yes, this idea of causing financial loss should be written in the Constitution for our presidents. Our presidents should be held accountable for clear-cut wastage. Look, the Saglemi housing estate, that Mahama number 1. You know what that means, his first term. He borrowed about $200 million. When he borrowed, doesn't mean his personal, the whole nation.
Yeah,
Yes, we borrowed $200 million to create a new settlement, housing, to make life a bit easier on people. Before he could complete it, he had to leave office, 2016. A new government comes. These buildings were there. Have you seen them?
I've seen the pictures of them.
Pictures.
Yeah.
Huge estates. The buildings are completed. Some were even fitted with the toilets and all kinds of things, but not 100% completed. A new government comes in and decides that it will not touch this project. We'll sell it off. We'll do this. For 8 years, now Mahama is back trying to see what he can do. $200 million off. Just as Mahama also said he was going to do 200 community schools in his first tenure.
Yeah.
From what I hear, at least 40 were completed. Some say 50, I don't care, but some were completed, but not the 200. Again, the next government comes, they decide to have their own kinds of schools. They, of course, completed some of them, but as I speak to you, many others are in the bushes, including hospitals and all. That is why your question is an important one. Can a president come in and waste public funds that way and just get away because he was president? They should be held accountable. So I tell myself, if President Mahama, and I like him, in fact, Mahama, he's a good friend, and I like him. But if he also allows the 111 so-called agenda 111 hospitals to waste away by not selling them off, if that is the decision, or completing some, and also leaves office, the same thing I'm saying about Kufuor, I will say about him. They should be arrested, tried for wasting public resources, and imprisoned, if that is what we have to do, to make sure that public officers come to serve the country. They don't come to lord over the country.
Let's talk about the 4-year political cycle. Do you think that's one of them?
It's the worst thing we have, unfortunately.
Really?
Yes. We have vitiated it. We have, what's the word? We have prostituted the 4-year cyclical thing. In America, it works for them because they've done it for 200 plus years. But a new country like Ghana, new in terms of our progress. And this thing I'm going to say, it doesn't subtract from democracy. So people might not say, oh, the guy who has been championing democracy is now talking about democracy not being good. I'm not saying that. Some aspects of what we call practice democracy, that is how we actualize the theories of democracy into practice, how we bring it down to earth, has not been very good. Because every democratic society looks at its own environment, its history, its culture and traditions, and create institutions and systems that will enable it to achieve the theoretical or the principles of democracy. And I think, as usual, we're too lazy to spend our brain on how we can create a democratic system that suits our circumstance. If you ask me, why 4 years? I don't know what I should tell you, except to say we just mimicked the American system. Because Britain is not 4 years. You can be a prime minister for 12 years so far as you are elected. That's why Tony Blair was there for 9 or 10 years. Margaret Thatcher was there for 11, 12 years. But of course, the system also allows you to be prime minister for 3 months if you don't do well, just like they kick out the Indian prime minister and the woman who came after. So it's a different system. It's not America. So why did our founding constitutional fathers, why did they say it should be 4 years? I don't know. They haven't told me. I haven't read anywhere.
So what do you think should be done from your...
Because, you see, the 4 year is interruptive. Just for the sake of example, if Mahama proves to be a good president within the next 3 years, if he proves to be, the question will be, should he continue or not? Because if he's dislocated, if he's taken out, maybe some of the progressive policies and projects may be ended, especially knowing our history, how we manage such things. So that question may become relevant. But the question should not arise because what? The Constitution says 4 years. You get the point?
Yeah.
So the 4 year is in the Constitution. If we think it's not good, then we'll have to use constitutional means to change it. But the reason why I think it's not helpful is that all the countries I mentioned earlier, with whom we started the race, they are 20 miles ahead. We are still crawling at the first mile post. And all of them, by the way, are not 4 year tenure presidency. You see, Lee Kuan Yew was there for 26 or so years. Mahathir of Malaysia was there for 23 years and changed Malaysia. Even in Africa, go to Rwanda. You've been to Rwanda? When you have time, please, and money, just fly there.
I like the added money.
Yes, because it takes money to fly. 20 years, almost 20 years, Kagame has been president. The country has changed. Yesterday, I saw a video by a certain Nigerian who went there admiring the beauty of Kigali. He saw here, there's no debt.
Was it the guy that was sitting on the floor?
Yes,
Yeah,
you saw it?
Yeah.
Just throwing his hands. I can't believe this. No debt. It started only 20 years ago. But I can tell you, if there had been changes in government in Rwanda, they wouldn't have accomplished this. So am I saying, and even, in fact, go to Addis, they are putting up the largest airport in Africa. They started. And they just finished the one we use currently just barely 12 years ago. Ghana, we are still struggling. We are fighting over name for the airport, but not the quality of things.
Quality.
Even though I will salute Mahama for building the Terminal 3, that is decent and better, you see. So my point is, today Addis Ababa is acclaimed as the best city, modern city in Africa, comparing it with any other modern city in Europe or America. And it's because Prime Minister Abe, taking over from the previous Prime Minister who passed away, the same political party leadership, they have been able to change Addis Ababa. Because I've been there many times. I was there, in fact, in the 90s, when Addis Ababa was like a village, like Bechem to me. Today is different. So I think, looking at all these examples, I think there is something to saying that the 4-year tenure is retrogressive. It doesn't really allow for continuity in the development. But having said that, I also have to caution that if it's more than the 4 years we have, and we want one person to be there for 10 years or whatever, then we are talking about a certain kind of leadership, a disciplined leadership, dedicated leadership, not a corrupt one, not a family and friends kind of government. If you can have that kind of leadership, like Kagame is, like Lee Kuan Yew was, like Mahathir was, In fact, in his 90s, they brought him back to be prime minister of Malaysia again. Now he's out, you see. So such things come with a certain personal discipline in terms of leadership. Otherwise, you can get a rogue who, after 4 years, if you keep him, will make things worse for the people. So it's how you balance the two. But the way it is in Ghana, I'm personally not too happy that the 4 year is really ruining us. But I'm not campaigning for anybody to stay beyond 4 years at this point until the constitution is changed.
Okay, good. So that is where I wanted to go. So if the constitution is going to be changed, what needs to be changed to allow, like the countries we've spoken about, right? 20 years and all that. What allows for that? Is it that maybe it's set in stone, or based on what you are doing, you are reviewed after a number of years?
Yeah, you see, I haven't studied all the constitutions of these countries I've mentioned in depth, so I cannot speak to it. But all I will say is that, first, there's a constitution that allows that.
Mm-hmm.
All these countries have constitutions, and the constitution allows that. And the constitution also places certain limits. Well, you see, human rights activists accuse Mugabe of abusing the rights, freedom of speech, freedom of this. And all these values are embedded in democratic governance. But it's true to say that in these countries I've mentioned, not all these freedoms are fully respected.
Yeah.
But people tend to like it because freedom must have a limit. Americans say there's freedom to bear arms, and you see what arms, weapons, are doing to their society. So freedom does not mean there's no limit.
Yeah.
The media in these countries I've mentioned may not have the freedom to publish anything. True. But the question is everything that you publish that is useful for society at large? Because there are certain things we have to respect. That every country needs stability, cohesiveness, on and on. But every country also has a right to hold the government accountable. In all these countries, because the leaders were accountable themselves, it was easier for the citizens to accept their leadership. In Africa, we are yet to see that.
You mentioned that Ghana and part of Africa copied the Western democratic institution. Is a 4-year political thing one of those?
It's one of those.
Which other ones can you mention?
Again, the over-centralization of power in Accra. That is a major setback. The constitution that we have, 1992 constitution, has a whole chapter on decentralization. But no government since Rawlings for this republic has taken seriously that particular chapter. And I suspect strongly that the political elite has discovered that it's to the advantage when they're in government to have this centralization.
Yeah.
Because here the president appoints all DCEs, regional ministers, appoints people from as low as assemblymen to ministers. So they use that as reward appointments for their party people who shall, as if appointments should be based on party affiliation or loyalty and not on competence. And that's why in many sectors of our country, we see glaring incompetence in the management of our affairs. Because oftentimes, the presidents will put round holes or round pegs in square holes, or the other way around.
Yeah.
You see. Again, because of the over-centralization, you find that in the districts, there's no life. In fact, I don't know if you travel much in your own country. When you leave Accra and go to any of these other places, Even Kumasi, that's supposed to be a second largest city. There's a big contrast between what you see in Kumasi and what you see here. Because Kumasi wanting something must be in Accra. If the regional minister don't know what they do, we have all the ministries have regional directors. What do they do? Because they have to. Look, yesterday I read the guy in charge of ambulance in this country against state ambulance service, as if hospitals cannot and other private people cannot run ambulances. The government invests so much money, imports ambulances. You remember the first story? Mahama number 1?
Yeah.
They imported some Mercedes ambulance that were discovered to be no ambulances. That matter is dead. Nobody follows it. It's dead. How much millions of dollars we spent is no story anymore. Now, the next government came and imported hundreds of ambulances. I remember Vice President Bawumia doing the inauguration. Today, we are told that out of the 350 or so, the number may be wrong, ambulances, 200 plus are not serviceable. I've been driving my car I bought in 2017. It's almost 10 years. I'm driving my car because I do routine maintenance and everything. Government thinks nobody cares about maintenance and everything. Some years ago, I went to my town, Agyeman-Duah, and I was going to the Electricity Corporation to pay my bill. Next to it, not far from it, is the ambulance hospital. And I saw an ambulance packed on blocks. Out of curiosity, I went to ask, what is wrong with this ambulance? Me, I'm curious. So when I'm around, I do look into it. I was told that a tire burst. So they've sent a requisition to Accra.
What?
You say what? And that's a story, true story that I personally experienced. A tire burst. They do not have money there to buy, so they have sent because the system requires them to requisition Accra for such. You see how stupid we are as a people. And I can bet you that could be one of the 200 plus that this gentleman just announced yesterday that they are not functioning. A whole car got what? Packed because of a tire.
One tire.
You know, when you think of it, and that's why decentralization is so important, that district should have had the means to replace the tire. But because the ambulance service is controlled from Accra, there's a whole national ambulance director with assistants and deputies paid, free housing. You know? There are so many such examples that will blow you away. You know, I want to recall some. Because it's so, when you think of it, you can go crazy. I mean, why should, anyway, that's, so all I'm saying is that for me is one of the dark sides of the kind of governance we practice. It doesn't allow for innovation at the district level. It doesn't even allow people to think, to do the right thing, because the thinking must be done in Accra. So Gen Z people who are listening to me, I think the challenge is on you, on how you get a better system, a better political system, not the one we have. The one we have as we are stabilized. Everybody like to say there have been no coup for 32 years, but that is not enough. We want a society where there will be jobs, where there will be transparency, where people will compete on equal levels, on and on and on and on. And where there will be buoyancy, where creativity of people can be released. Now I see a lot of creativity in the art sector, you know, creative arts, the musicians, creativity. The same creativity can emerge and should emerge in other forms at the political level, at the local level. For instance, if we were to have district assemblies properly constituted, elected, I'm sure most of you can cut your political teeth at the local level, becoming an elected assembly member, becoming an elected DCE, then you move on to the national level to aspire towards the presidency. But not to leave the university tomorrow, and because you have the loudest mouth and join a party, and your party is lucky to be elected with no experience behind you, you are made a minister, you are made a DCE. What do you go to do?
What do you do?
And that's why perhaps I should add this. When I was asked recently about what year should a president...
I was going to read that for you right now.
Okay.
And if this TV channel misquoted you, then I'm also misquoting. But this is what they said. Prof said this. I think overall, I'm happy with the process. Personally, I don't like the idea of moving the presidential age from 40 to 30. I saw it yesterday. I'm like, wow, I was going to ask you about that. Why?
Part of the reason is what I've just said.
Yeah.
I don't believe in Ghana. You see, don't make mistake by thinking Norway, they have a prime minister who is 28, 29, Copenhagen also. These are different people. Look, even in the States, somebody who has finished the university, the amount of exposure they will have had, you cannot even imagine. Because in the undergrad, they are required to travel abroad, spend months, and on their own, they save money and buy tickets to go beyond their domain, come to Europe, come to Africa. These kids you see on the streets, they are kids, undergrads, but they come out of curiosity to see what Africa is, what Ghana is, learn about your government. How many Ghanaian students get exposed? Even some have done master's degree in Ghana, they've not traveled outside the country. And you want this person, because he can talk loud and join a political party, become your president. What kind of, I don't know. What is he bringing? Yes. That's why I think the 30 years thing is absurd. Because you have to look at your context, your own environment to see whether that applies. Most people in Ghana, before they can even build a house, will be how old? Tell me. Do you have a house?
No.
You are renting. You have a house? Uh-huh. But in America and elsewhere, somebody can have a house when he's 25, 26 because they have a system, mortgaging. So once you have a good job, mortgage will pay for you and you have a house. So you experience even managing little monies, managing your life. Here, somebody with a master's degree is still staying with the father or mother or, patching with friends. That's why the idea of 30-year presidency, for me, it frightens me. Not that you are not matured. In fact, I can say, without any fear of contradiction, there are some 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds in this country who are much smarter than myself, maybe even than the president. Because you're president doesn't mean you got all the knowledge, but our president get exposed, so they are better able to make decisions. You see, so it's not a matter of smartness.
Yeah.
So the Gen Zs take time, acquire the experience, get the exposure, deepen your knowledge, so that when you come into leadership, you can make the changes that are needed.
Prof, we've spoken about democracy and we spoke about the economy and how all these parties come and go and all that, right? Do you think, I watched a video by one man a couple of years ago and he was talking about how if these presidents don't take care, the youth are going to be very, very angry because they were failing them and all that. Do you think there can be a democracy for long if this economy keeps failing the youth? Because the youth population is high over here.
Yes, about 70%.
Yeah.
That's a question, and I think it's a question that even President Mahama has alluded to, and some other leaders have alluded to. Africa generally, we have a very youthful population, and that's why people think the future belongs to Africa. But it depends on how you prepare the youth. Yeah. You can never own the future if you are not better prepared, you see. Yes, you see, people can get angry. And when people get angry, social revolution emerges. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
All the books I've read, if you look at Latin American revolutions, the changes that occurred in the 60s, 70s, even in Africa, if you look at the coup d'etats, most often they come after frustration builds in people and they want change. And that is how nature is. When people feel strongly that the rulers are no longer aligned to them, the distance between rulers and the rule, when it widens, it creates a serious challenge for governance, and that can lead to eruption. So yes, if we do not play our game well in terms of building the country, creating jobs, or at least empowering the youth to create jobs. You see, at times when we think of, or people talk about job creation, these days it's changing a bit, but people tend to think of government and industry creating jobs. You have created a job for yourself for what you're doing. There's a young man I know, I mentored him, done his master's degree, wanted to go to America. I said, look, these days, why America? He did agric studies, UDS and masters from Lagos. So I encourage him to take interest in farming. Today, as I speak, I visited his poultry farm just, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And he tells me every month he grosses 30,000 cedis after he paid the 2 boys that help him to keep. He has 1,000 bears. 1,000 bears. Now he's preparing to open another site for another 1,000 bears. And he's grossing 30,000 cedis. I've never been paid that much in Ghana. And if, in fact, we have to go strictly by their salaries, ministers don't even get 30,000 cedis. Here's a young boy, Jeffrey. So I've taken him to a farm. I have an old land my father gave. I said, look, we have to take care of. It's a jungle now, but let's turn it into a farm. In other words, there's so much one can do. But unfortunately, the education we get mostly do not prepare us for that kind of creativity. Creativity on the farm, creativity in carpentry, creativity, So we need to avoid a future rebellion. I think we should seriously consider self-empowerment in terms of giving young people the skills. Another thing, let me maybe wind this up by telling you a story about the Chinese PhDs. In China, before you get a PhD, they want you to produce something tangible that is going to make a difference. Master degree students, depending on the area, you produce something, can be in the lab and create before they give you the degree. In Ghana, just like me, you can go through PhD and you cannot even fix a broom when it's broken. Yes, these are the realities. So everybody wants a Agyeman-Duah so you can put on a tie and sit in an air-conditioned office. They don't do that. Even in America, rich people are not those who work for the government. You see, that's why, perhaps going back to our earlier conversation, the whole notion of state control of the economy, for me, is not desirable. At best, the state can concentrate its energies on certain sectors that may be beyond the capability of private individuals or companies. For instance, the energy sector. Even today, we have allowed private participation in energy. Otherwise, we can't have power around the country. The one in Tema, Soglo, or whatever the name is. So I think we have to develop a system that will empower the Ghanaian young people to be self-dependent. You finish school, you go, you set up something. Not the street one of, I see some big people selling dog chains and these days everything on the roadside. That could be seen as employment, but it's not the kind of employment I'm talking about. Something that you create with your mind and make money out of it, like you're doing now.
I'm enjoying this. Prof, at the beginning of this conversation, I asked you that Ghana at 69, how are you feeling? You said mixed feelings.
Yeah. Mixed feeling because knowing what I know, we could have done by far better than where we are. That's why I say it's mixed feeling. The strikes, look, we still do not have, Mahama is the one envisioning what he calls expressway between Accra and Kumasi. Have you driven on the Kumasi road lately?
No.
It's hellish. And you wonder, a whole country 69 years old.
We don't
have a superhighway between the two largest cities. We don't. 69 years.
I went
Look,
to Suminya.
In Nkrumah, in the 60s, built Temamoto Way. Cemented roads, concrete roads, I should say. And the plan was to carry it all the way to Kumasi and possibly to Takwa. That was the vision. What went wrong? Even after he was overthrown, why couldn't successive governments see the need to continue or do something similar? If you drive on the Kumasi Road today, your life is in your heart, in your hands, because these 34-wheeler, at times I count the wheels under these trucks. I counted 38, 40, coming from Burkina Faso, Mali, elsewhere, through this road to Temahabo. And when the previous government decided to do the bypasses, look, the bypasses were initiated by Kufuor. He did the Nsawam Road. I don't know whether you were born to see the Nsawam Road. Yeah. It was one place I hated when I came back to Ghana in 94 and have to drive to Kumasi. Because you could spend 2 hours there. There was this nasty bridge with a railway anyway. So it could be choked. Then in Koko, you could spend 1 hour and a half to 2 hours passing through Nkoko. Konongo wasn't as bad. Then Kufuor decided, look, this is bad for our economy. So he completed the Nsawam bypass, the dual carriageway, all the way to you know where. Then the plan was, then he started Nkoko. He didn't complete before he left office. And he had earmarked Konongo also to be bypassed as a gradual way of developing a dual carriage from Accra to Kumasi. He left. What became of this? It took Atamils 3 years to even finish the other portion of the Nkoko overpass. After that, everybody went to sleep. Then in his last years in office, Akufo-Addo said, oh, we need to do the bypass. Good idea. But now, as I speak, it's all abandoned. But the point though I'm making is that Mahama wants to do an expressway, which I fully support. But I pray that he finishes the bypasses that were started to enable traffic to move as he embarks on the expressway. Because the expressway, there's no way, absolutely no way he can finish before his term ends. In Ghana, it takes us 10 years to do a 5-kilometer road, if we are lucky. So if you are going to do 190-kilometer road, expressway with all the things that he imagines to be on the road, please don't tell me you're going to finish it before your office your tenure expires. It's not possible. So let's complete the bypasses and make it a little bit more easier for people to transport themselves and things as we begin the expressway, which is way overdue. That's why I refer to the Temamoto Way that Nkrumah built in the 60s. So I think at 69, we could have done far better, but we have not been fortunate to get leaders who think like you and others, who want to see the country better than it is.
I mean, from what I said, I don't even know if I should ask my next question, but I'll still ask. I'm 26. Most people will be around this age bracket. What what would you say to these young Ghanaians who, because now people are traveling and just leaving because they don't think there's a future. Do we see any better future for?
There is a future. I cited Jeffrey as an example of this young man. He's now 32, finished his master's, and now he's doing serious farming. He's grossing net in his pocket 30,000 cedis. And I'm not, I don't joke like that. In fact, he's coming to meet me tomorrow about the new farm that I want to encourage him to develop. You see, I can tell you what you are doing right now is better. You are more comfortable than being in the US. And with the restrictions today, how much can you make in the US? If you make $1,000 a week, mind you are paying about more than half of it to your rent, your expenses and all. So people go there and stay for 10 years, they've not been able to even achieve their goal. I live in the US for 20 years, and I know what I'm talking about. My path was different. I went to school, went to do my master's, my PhD, I finished, I get a job to teach in the university. Straightforward. But not everybody may be as lucky as myself and a few of my colleagues who are teaching there. And even in the teaching, like most other places, you don't get much money, but at least you are comfortable. So if you are here and you don't have that goal, but you just think, I'll go to America and work, drive Uber and that kind of stuff. I have a friend who was a taxi driver in New York. Now when he walks, he can't even stand straight. Because taxi drivers will tell you in New York, they sit and sit and sit. Yeah, parents. So young people don't cross the desert to Europe to go and pick cherries and pick apples. I know they do that in Italy and Spain and elsewhere. Otherwise, you are perpetuating the slavery that the white folks took us through. Don't go to America unless you are assured of you are caretaking. That is to say, something is cooked for you to live comfortably. But don't ever go to say, I'm going to just look for money. It's completely useless. In this country, despite all the challenges, it's better that you can make yourself better in this country if only you are prepared to think and use your hands. That's all.
This conversation will not end without us talking about Galamsey. I forgot the channel, but I think you were talking about illegal mining in one of the TV channels and all that. And Ghana 69 in the last couple of years. I mean, I used to follow politics, but this previous election, a lot of young people were following a lot because of all the issues. And last year there were what they call it, demonstration about Galamsey and all that. What is happening?
I have to be honest with you. I'm a bit confused because the present government seem to have found a way to contain it. They set up the NIMOs who go around and arrest and ban things and all. It seems to be making some impact. At the same time, the newly established Gold Board is also procuring from small-scale miners. And I believe not all the small-scale miners are licensed. So that leads me to suspect that perhaps they are also procuring from Galamseyers. I may be wrong. Sami Jamfi can pardon me if he thinks what I'm saying is not true. Of course, through the Gold Board, Ghana is doing better in terms of accumulating the gold. How they manage it is something else. So whilst gold is giving us some benefits, I don't think we should risk destroying our environment and especially our water bodies with Galamsey. So his government is going to be able to tame the destruction of the water, especially the water bodies. And for the forest, we need to stop, but at least it can be reclaimed, but not the water. So if you ask me about Galamsey, Again, as I say, I think this government appears to be more serious than before. By the way, the previous government, the president told us he's going to put his presidency on the line. Didn't go anywhere. So if President Mahama is determined to stop Galamsey, I wish him well, and I pray he does what he should do to stop it.
Thank you so much. This has been an insightful conversation. I know the time dragged a bit, and I believe the people watching us who enjoyed it so much. Is there anything you want to say as Ghana is celebrating independence? I know you've said a lot, but final with anything you want to say, you can look in that camera.
69 years, I think I'm borrowing from President Mahama, using his term resetting. I think this country has been wayward in many ways, and we need to reset our path. And that should begin with changing our mindset. For me, the biggest reset we need is the mind of the Ghanaian. Our mindset is not good. We like to tell lies. We are not honest with ourselves. We are all hypocrites. We refuse to look in the eye and tell the truth. A country cannot survive with hypocrisy and lie-telling. So if you want to change, I think our personalities must be changed. The way we think about things, the way we do things, so that when you come into leadership, you be coming with a new and better set of ideas, a new and better attitude towards governance, and a new and better behavior. If we do that, then we can bring the country up to speed on where we have to be.
Lovely. By the way, Prof, I like your shirts. I'm serious, they told you.
I was going to say something. Okay, I can get one for you.
Hey.
If you're a good boy.
I'm a good boy. All right, guys, thank you for watching, and happy independence, Ghana. Catch you in the next one.